It's not recording.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. It's much appreciated. My name is Piotr Niewiadomski. I'm a senior lecturer in the Department of Geography and Environment, and my research focuses on tourism, mainly sustainable tourism, but I'm also interested in sustainability transitions more generally. And I'm trying to bring these two things together, how to help tourism transition to sustainability. Welcome to Lisa, Anna, my former students from Sustainability Transitions. So thank you for coming. Anyone else? But if you want to join the program, you're more than welcome, of course. Okay. So to talk about sustainable tourism, let's first understand why tourism is not sustainable, why we need to make it sustainable. So let's go back to World War II and all the changes that took place in the aftermath of World War II. More political and economic stability, more economic openness, open borders, more international investment, more international trade. All of this based on capitalist principles. These two things stimulated the development of the travel industry, new technology, especially jet aircraft, but also communication technologies, reservation systems in the travel industry. Traveling became easier, cheaper, and available to more people. And that all was accompanied by lifestyle changes, which also stimulated searching for adventures, new experiences. International tourism became a thing like it had never been before, and contributed to and was caused by what could be called a shrinking world. Yes, time-space compression. I'm a geographer, so I had to refer to this famous geographer, David Harvey, here. But this is exactly what happened. Just 25 million international tourist trips in 1950, and 2019, shortly before COVID, we had 1.5 billion. That's quite a spike, yes? And when we're talking about 1.5 billion international tourist trips, we are talking about 1.5 billion different tourism impacts instigated by all the travelers in different ways. That's a big, big change, of course. I'm sure you see what happened, yes? Here, everyone remembers 2020. In 2019, it was anticipated that by 2020, the number would reach 1.6 and 1.8 by 2030. It was 380 because COVID brought tourism to a standstill. I will come back to this in a minute. Of course, in the 80s, there were many other problems. That led to the emergence of the concept of sustainable development, defined as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And this concept provoked important questions about international tourism, mass tourism, and the impacts of tourism and the impacts which the movement of people on such a scale brings alongside all the accompanying infrastructural developments. How to address the tensions between the economic gains, which many countries and regions started accumulating from tourism, based on tourism, and how to address the tensions between these economic gains and environmental and sociocultural costs. So the concept of sustainable tourism was coined, which was probably almost a carbon copy of sustainable development, because according to the World Tourist Organization, Sustainable tourism should make optimal use of environmental resources, respect the sociocultural authenticity of host communities, and ensure long-term economic operations to bring benefits to all stakeholders. As such, we can be talking about three pillars of sustainability in tourism. Economic sustainability, defined in terms of economic gains to be retained by the local community, and whether they can cover the cost of catering for tourists, mitigate the effects of their presence, and offer a sufficient income to the community. Mitigate the effects of their presence. That's where the problem pretty much starts, because that's the reason why economic sustainability is used to compensate for environmental, social, and cultural damages caused by tourism. Many destinations think, okay, let's accumulate a lot of money from tourism. Even if they destroy the environment, we'll deal with it after they leave, which very often never happens. Usually it doesn't happen. Environmental sustainability is understood in terms of reducing negative impacts of tourism on the natural environment or ensuring that they can be reversed and the environment restored. Again, a lot of wishful thinking, which takes us back to the previous point. There is also sociocultural sustainability, social sustainability, the host community's ability to absorb inputs of extra people, cultural sustainability, the ability of local people to retain the elements of their culture which distinguish them from tourists, even though many elements of local cultures are becoming commodified and sold to tourists as products, very often disrespectfully to the local culture. Very often local communities are guilty of doing this themselves for money. But let's focus on the environment, because international tourism and tourism in general has a number of very serious negative impacts on the environment. Carbon emissions, mainly from transport and aviation in particular. Scaring, killing animals, destroying vegetation and animal habitats, soil erosion, trampling, other forms of physical damage, like the one here in this picture. You might say that's a nice landscape, a beautiful building, but this building was built in a place where probably it shouldn't. So it is a form of damage to the natural environment. Littering, of course, and I mentioned transport. Increasing the burden on resources, including fresh water, energy, fuel, but also building materials at the construction stage. Transforming natural landscapes by building tourist-related facilities, so like concrete villages in what used to be nice, wild environments, places, habitats. As such, tourism contributes to the Anthropocene and the Great Acceleration. The Anthropocene is a geological epoch in which humans constitute a geophysical force on the global scale, whereas the Great Acceleration is the exponential growth of nearly all facets of human activity after World War II. And that contributes to the transformation of the relationship between humans and the environment. Tourism is a powerful geophysical force. It contributes to the Anthropocene, and it is a key agent of the Great Acceleration, even though other processes of the Great Acceleration fostered tourism development after World War II. As such, tourism shapes the ability of the Earth to sustain the human species, and that's why something has to be done about it. So how sustainable is contemporary tourism? These pictures speak for themselves. The Maya Bay in Thailand and the Gievont Mountain in the Polish Tatra Mountains. The left column shows how these places should look like. The right column shows how they actually look like because of tourism. You actually need to literally stand in a queue 2,000 meters above the sea level to get to the peak of this mountain, even though it looks like a nice, pristine, almost unreachable mountain. That's why it's high time for tourism to account for the limits and boundaries of the Earth and its impacts on climate change. So what can be done about it? How can we help solve the problem? There are many tools of sustainability in tourism. Some work better, some work less. Area protection like national parks. Legal and industrial regulations, fine, yes, including corporate social responsibility programs. even though there's a lot of greenwashing in many of them. Visitor management techniques like entry or vehicle restrictions, environmental impact assessment, consultation and participation techniques, how to make sure that local communities are controllers of what is happening in their places of residence, not objects of tourism, a problem that is quite common in developing countries. That's the reason why sometimes tourism is referred to as a neo-colonial force. Codes of conduct and education, sustainability indicators, how to measure resource use, waste, pollution, carbon footprint, and so on. Are there any more sustainable forms of tourism? Yes, there is a lot of categories of tourism that are very often classed as sustainable, responsible, green, no impact, low impact, or environmentally friendly. They are called ecotourism, community-based tourism, nature-based tourism, but they are not sustainable if they are not organized and managed very well. If poorly managed, all these forms of tourism can be as unsustainable as traditional mass tourism. And we've seen it happening. Some destinations in the south of Spain, even though they absorb a lot of mass tourism, they are sometimes managed so well that tourism there is more sustainable than ecotourism in some remote destinations when only few people go. It depends on the nature of the impact, not only the number of people visiting the destination. You remember COVID-19, I said I would come back to this. COVID-19 brought international tourism to a standstill across the whole world. That resulted in many calls for rebooting the tourism system. For instance, there is an opportunity to take advantage of the current crisis to reinvent the tourism of tomorrow towards a more sustainable, resilient, and innovative sector. A right call. We said all the right things when COVID started. How to reinvent tourism, how to rebuild tourism in a sustainable way. But that never happened because businesses, jobs, livelihoods were prioritized and economic priorities won again. That's a quote from street graffiti in Hong Kong. I don't speak Chinese, so I really hope this is exactly what it means. That's at least what I was told. We can't return to normal because the normal we had was exactly the problem. That's from 2020. I hope you agree tourism is one of the things this quotation applies to more than anything else. And if I do have a few minutes left, yeah, do I would like to talk about an interesting case study. Hotels in Aberdeen, yes, our city, our beautiful granite city. The hotel sector is a key subsector of tourism. The hotel sector is very capital intensive, but also fragmented and vulnerable to external factors and shocks like COVID, like terrorist attacks. It is very resource intensive, raw building materials at the construction stage, water and energy at the operational stage. It is a major producer of solid waste and wastewater. It also relies heavily on food supplies and many centralized procurement contracts. The most shocking example is that many hotels in Aberdeen want to promote the local larder. They offer Aberdonian beef steaks. Fair enough, I get that. But instead of getting beef from local farmers, they actually get beef from wholesalers because it's cheaper. The main beef wholesaler from whom Aberdonian hotels get Aberdonian beef is based in Derby. And this wholesaler gets beef from Aberdonian farmers. This is exactly how absurd this system is. Hotel sector in Scotland went through a perfect storm of unfavorable circumstances: the oil crisis, COVID-19, Brexit, energy crisis, cost of living crisis. These are the circumstances that determine how easily or not it is for the hotel sector to become more sustainable. But there is a long way to go, even though there are plenty of pressures on the hotel sector to become more sustainable. Plenty of agendas, global, national, many organizations. Hoteliers exhibit strong environmental awareness, but these pressures do not bring any measurable results. And environmental awareness of hotel managers is not enough to make hotels more sustainable. pro-sustainability developments are very rare, and they are mostly driven by hoteliers' moral conviction that it is the right thing to do, and they are undertaken only when they can bring savings, like in terms of energy or water usage. And in my recent project, I identified three main forces that maintain the current unsustainable regime in the hotel sector. First, shortage of regulations. The hotel industry is almost like a forgotten industry because there are very few legally binding regulations. Recycling is probably the only thing hotels have to do by law to be more sustainable. High-level political agendas are not backed up by detailed guidance what to do. It's difficult to transfer good practice from the public sector. There is a question who is going to pay for the implementation of sustainable solutions, especially in times when hotels fight for survival because of COVID, Brexit, and all the other things. There are also regulations that hamper the transition to sustainability. For instance, if a hotel is based in a listed building, they cannot install double glazing because many planning regulations have still not caught up with the sustainability agenda. And planners have to reject applications for replacing single glazing with double glazing because that's what they are obliged to do by law, even though it is heartbreaking to them. The second force is market conditions. In unfavorable market circumstances, economic survival takes priority, and we saw that during COVID. We said all the good things, but we never did anything that could be done. Other kinds of tourism cannot easily compensate for the decrease in oil and gas customers in the northeast of Scotland, which is sad because to be sustainable, we should reduce oil and gas. In the meantime, many sectors in the city rely on oil and gas customers and want them to come back. Another paradox. Staffing issues caused by Brexit and COVID make it even more difficult. I spoke to a hotelier in the Cairngorms, and she said, we have a lot of money. We are a rich company. We want to do the right thing. We want to implement sustainable solutions, but we can't find people to work. There are no people to do this for us. We can't do this because Brexit made it impossible for us to recruit enough laborers to get things done. The third force is something we are all guilty of. We look for luxury if we are hotel guests. In the current consumptionist society, an ability to pay for hotel services reflects social status, and therefore hotel services are seen as a form of luxury. Customers do not like encouragements to be more environmentally friendly. I've paid for it. I don't need to turn off the lights. I don't need to turn off the TV. I can keep the shower running because I paid for it. Many hoteliers said exactly that, even though no one does the same thing at home. A lot depends on the social-cultural profile of individual guests. Of course, generalizations like this should be made with care, but for instance, there is a qualitative difference between Scandinavian guests and American and British guests. In Scotland, oil and gas customers are often perceived as demanding and not very sustainable either. Again, I need to be careful, not everyone is the same. Perhaps it's a corporate rather than oil and gas related. So the question is, should the notion of luxury be redefined? Should we try to make eco as something fashionable and marketable? The role of education, fine, but it's an evolutionary process. It's not going to happen overnight. Until the behavior of individual guests changes, it's still a long way to go for hotels to be sustainable. Right, I think I'm running out of time, so I'll skip conclusions. But it's just a summary of what I've said. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you for your attention.